Happy holidays, 29thers, and welcome to another very special edition of Veterans Virtues. I'm your host, Alex Crane, and I have with me some of the most valued members of our storied unit. That's right, Company HQ. So, say hello, gentlemen.
Guten Tag.
Hello.
Sup?
And then there's First Sergeant Deathfield. So, we find ourselves staring down the smoking barrel of another year gone by. For the 29th and, for the world. And boy, let me tell you, it's been a wild one. We've changed ourselves left and right, seen serious growth across the unit, and even had opened up the very first Pacific Standard Time platoon in our history, in Easy Company. So, a load of firsts, that's for sure. With all that in mind, though, real quick, let's get down to business for tonight. So, today, we have every single member of company leadership from both Dog and Easy Company, except for one. Unfortunately, we weren't able to be joined by Charlie, but next time we'll get them in here. So, how we're going to be doing this tonight, guys, as I do not believe we've ever done anything like this before, is I'm going to be fielding a number of questions, which you guys will be answering for your company. And so if you want to answer a few of them for yourself, there's going to be a few that are a bit more personal. But if you guys want to bounce off one another, that'll be perfectly fine. So, let's get us started. First of all, our first question, let me ask, what brought you to the 29th in the first place, and how long have you been in the unit? And we'll throw that out to Dog Company to start.
I guess I should go first.
Sounds like it.
Alrighty. So, I joined about back in 2007. I was sort of getting into some Steam games after a long break from mainly I was going to play Counter-Strike Source, but I also installed Data Defeat since I was installing CS off of a disk. And I hopped into a random server that night for a little bit of Data Defeat play, and it happened to be the 29th server, and I got recruited. So, dressed as, I guess, history.
Well, we all have a start somewhere. How about you, First Lieutenant? How about you?
I am actually coming up on 6 years with the 29th, and I got into the 29th, got a buddy come over one day and was like, hey, I found this game. It's really cool, World War II, so I installed Rising Storm, Red Orchestra back then. Started playing on some random servers, ended up playing in 29th servers more often than anything else. Saw their recruitment link pop up in the chat one day, followed it, and enlisted in the 29th.
So what you're telling me is that our recruitment links actually work occasionally. Very cool. All right, so let's toss this over to Easy Company then. Captain, do you want to say your piece?
Yeah, I joined I enlisted at the tail end of 2013. Actually, 5 days ago would have been the 7-year anniversary of my enlistment, as of this recording. But after BCT, I joined January of 2014. So technically, I'm approaching 7 years, but I did do a little discharge stint for about 3 months to finish a master's degree. So in total, I've been here about 6 years and 8 months.
Interesting.
And then I started, Red Orchestra 2.
Very cool. Well, as it goes, I think a master's degree is a fair reason to take a very quick break, but good thing we got you back. And finally, First Sergeant Deathfield, what's your thought?
Technically, I would have joined also back in 2007 in DoD. I don't recall why. I think I just stumbled into the server and someone named PFC Rogers recruited me. I had no concept of what Realism was, and I didn't last very long, and so I ended up GDing about a month later. But the idea of Realism is kind of stuck in my head, so I was with a few different ones over the next 9 years, on and off. And then eventually I found a Corporal Fritz in the middle of an RO2 server. And I thought, let's just try it again, I guess. It had been a long time. So went back into Able and RO2, and yeah, that was 2015. So
I do know how to pick them.
I have a bit more of a complicated story.
Yeah, yours is a little bit more moving pieces. All right, well, now that we've heard your repertoire and all that jazz, let's ask. We've already gone into it a little bit, which is what your first game is. But my real curiosity here is, what made you select the one you're in now? Because all of us have chosen to move at certain points. All of us have chosen the points to get to where we are. And obviously with Dog and Easy, we're looking at Rising Storm 2 and Squad. So let's start with Squad this time. Captain or First Sergeant Deathfield, why don't you take a swing?
Well, I'd say first off, I was the one who actually put forward the test server for RS2 when we were considering expanding, but I also played the Squad one. And when I decided, I think Squad was the one I went with just because I felt there was more opportunity for expanding on realism in general. I had gone over them both and just thought Squad is kind of the way to go. Luckily, they opened for both games. But yeah, I think Squad just has a little more opportunity for a lot of different things, but RS2 wasn't a bad way to go either.
So we're actually going to get back to that a bit later, and so I'm excited to hear that there's some thinking on it right now. For now, we'll jump over back to Dog Company here. So Dog Company, what's your thoughts? What brought you to the game that you're at now?
I'll take it first this time. I was back in, Red Orchestra 2, and when they first were trying to decide, which game and everything, I played, Vietnam, and I, tried Squad out a bit, and I just found Squad to be too many moving pieces for me, I guess, too much stuff going on at once, and I felt Vietnam was just a little bit more laid back, so I kind of went with that one just for a little bit more simplistic gameplay, I guess.
I dig it. Yeah, more straight lines and all that, as it were. I think Arma was kind of that for me. I was in Charlie for this small stint, and it was a little bit too much for me, so I definitely get that. How about you, First Sergeant?
Well, I already covered that I was in Day of Defeat to begin with.
Yeah.
How I got to where I am now in RS2 was, well, back in 2018, at the end of that, we closed Able Company, which was our Red Orchestra 2 Rising Storm 1 company. And so most of my guys, they sort of ended up moving to Dog Company, Rising Storm 2. Probably mostly because it was as close to the gaming experience they already had.
Yeah, still pretty.
And I decided to go with them, so I wasn't just having them all go into unknown territory, so to speak, on their own.
Very cool. That's actually a pretty noble reason to do so. All right, so final thing about you guys before we start moving into kind of more bigger thoughts is I'm really curious. This is something that I've asked a few times, and I love the answers I get, and I'm expecting you guys to have a similar one here. What was your favorite position you've held in the 29th? And when I say position, for clarity, not asking about jobs, I'm specifically talking about positions within the hierarchy. So it's squad leadership, platoon leadership, maybe even just being an enlisted man. So considering most of you have been through the gamut of that, in fact all of you, for obvious reasons, what are your thoughts? And I'll leave it open to anybody here. Anybody want to take a swing at it first?
I guess I'll take it first real quick because I want to step away for a quick moment after I do.
Why is that?
So basically, I think my favorite positions have been either squad leadership or platoon leadership, because it's a lot more hands-on and you do a lot more with your guys. And since Power in the 29th is kind of structured downwards up, so to speak,
Right.
you can have a lot more influence as a squad leader or platoon leader than necessarily as a company HQ member. Not to say that you don't have influence as, company HQ, but there was a lot more involvement. But I've also appreciated my time as company HQ.
Right.
That's about it.
Very cool. All right, thank you very much. Let's just go down the list here then. First Sergeant Deathfield, how about you then?
First Sergeant Steer kind of stole my general answer. Either platoon sergeant or company or senior NCO of the company. Mostly because the platoon is you might argue, the core unit of the 29th. We deploy in platoons. SLT is primarily run from platoon, and the list goes on. So platoon leadership is really, really key. It's like a crossroads of almost everything. But I'll argue that senior NCO of the company is a pretty damn good one because I feel like I have the freedom to just jump wherever I want to and fix things or improve things or look into things. And if I see something that's wrong or something that I think would be really cool to do, well, I can just do it, right? And I don't have to really, deal with a lot of people above me who might, kind of, I'm gonna say, get in the way.
Right.
If I want to do a drill that has lots of, orders, well, I'm just gonna do it, right? If I want to start having people train that way, I'm just gonna do it. So I think there's a lot of freedom to be had there.
That makes sense. That's a really really honest answer there. All right, Captain Fritz, how about you?
I think my favorite position would either be platoon or company level. My experience in Platoon HQ, I was running first platoon of Able Company, which was a Euro platoon. So when I moved in there, the platoon was having like a lot of problems, and what was nice is I got to kind of like be there to help them fix it. I had to kind of bring. There wasn't really an SLT program going on per se. This is a darker time in Able Company's history, so I restarted everyone, and then I was able to work with them all and kind of mold them into the leadership I needed them to be when I was their platoon leader. I found that really rewarding. I got really like hands-on. I think First Sergeant already mentioned with them, got to know them really well, but I say company HQ similar to what First Sergeant Deathfield said, because there I get to do more events, things that will enable my platoon leadership to take something and make it their own for their own men. I really like allocating opportunities to people.
Cool. So platoon leadership when it comes to your own personal enjoyment, and then company leadership when it comes to being able to facilitate others. I can respect that. All right, First Lieutenant Oakes, why don't you finish us off here?
I'm kind of going to have to... Unfortunately for me, I haven't spent much time at company yet. Just recently being moved up there. But I think for me, it would have to be squad level.
I was excited for
It's just nice having, those 12 guys or so that you're really... very well, what they need, what they want, what they're after in the 29th, and you just really get to know them. The higher up you move, it gets to be a bit more difficult to maintain knowing everybody that's under your control.
Oh, yeah.
So I enjoyed squad level probably the most.
I definitely feel that. You feel a lot more close. If they feel like your guys more than ever. Totally agree. All right, so now we're going to switch up kind of our focus. Before we were focusing on you guys, now we're going to be focusing more on the 29th as a whole. And in order to fit that better, I'm going to be talking to you guys as company HQ rather than as individuals. So if you guys want to throw out one, like maybe hand off the next question for one of you and then take on the next one afterwards, however you guys want to respond as a unit, that's good with me. So let's throw this to Easy Company first. Which game, out of all the games the 29th has been in, do you think has fit the 29th in terms of our needs best?
How would you define what our needs are?
That's up to you, right?
I would...
Yeah, go for search.
I'm going to assume that a lot of people listening to this are probably going to want to think DH, and I get why.
Mm-hmm.
I will argue Squad is that game, if only because a lot of what we do, we could be done in DH and more. The 29th has this thing where it is very infantry focused, but people kind of want to push outwards, and people want a variety of different scenarios. We can kind of do everything DH was doing, and then some. I would argue even maybe RS2 potentially could as well.
Right.
But Squad, I think, is kind of the good middle ground. Arma 3 is very, very Milsim. RS2 could be argued to be the opposite. It's kind of arcadey. It's more infantry focused. And Squad's like right in the middle. So you could argue that all three games are actually pretty good, and you just come to the 20th and you pick your poison. But I'm just going to argue Squad is the one.
Fair enough. All right. How about from you guys over in Dog? What's your thoughts?
Can I take this first question, first attempt?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. I would argue, although I believe First Sergeant Deathfield might be correct with the more potential in Squad, and probably even Charlie. It's a shame they're not here to weigh in on this one as well.
Bummer.
But for me, I would say, in terms of our history, Day of Defeat and Darkest Hour, maybe a little bit more Darkest Hour. And the reasons for that in Day of Defeat, we had some major reforms to get us structured into from what was essentially a clan into the realism unit that we know today.
Right.
And it was very competitive back then for the realism community. I can't speak for the other games since I'm in RS2, but it's very lacking. And in RS2, the only other groups are just clans playing the 12v12 skirmish and aren't even interested in trying realism, which is strange considering how much potential the game has for anything else but skirmish. In Darkest Hour, I would say that was probably one of our best times because it was one of our highest growth periods before up until recently. We've been growing really well recently, but we were able to have 4 full companies, even 2 GMT companies standalone, as well as it was where we sort of was able to break into the multi-game system that we had, that we use today.
Right.
So there was a lot that provided us in terms of the 29th itself from structurally from both Day of Defeat and Darkest Hour. Take a different approach to this question than First Sergeant Dustfield here. I'm also going to step away again real quick.
No worries. We'll hand it off then. Okay, so both very solid questions. I want to thank you both for that. Very, very on target. Moving from them then, good bouncing point, is if you could add anything to your respective games, so Squad and RS2 again, in order to fit like our needs even more, what would that be? So let's start with Dog this time. We'll hand it off to First Lieutenant Oaks here. What would you add?
I know personally, I think most of the people in the game and in Dog would like to see some more vehicles in the game. I know that was something everybody was really looking forward to, but unfortunately just kind of stalled out. And people are always pushing us for helicopter use and stuff like that. So I feel like most people would probably want to see, some ground vehicles, maybe some more air options and stuff along that line.
Very cool. So really, really toss out the armor and get into that vehicular play. And I totally understand that. Actually, this is a great time to switch over to Squad now. Easy Company, how do we feel? What do we want to add now that, we're facing this same question?
That's kind of hard to say. We have so many tools and toys to play with. I think the only thing I would want to change wouldn't be necessarily the game, but would rather be how modifications are done to the game itself. For instance, I know like the modding community has had a hard time with the SDKs getting published on time, but also expanding that to kind of post-scriptum and kind of the burning fire that game has been. If they didn't move that to be its own, like if the modders didn't try to be their own independent modding company or gaming company and they just stayed with it being a mod, that could be played side by side with Squad by just launching the Squad EXE, right?
Right.
I think that would have been the way to go on that, and also like a really nice addition to it is already a very flexible game, both engine-wise and gameplay.
Definitely, I can agree with you. You want to jump in?
I would also argue OWI needs to loosen their grip on this whitelisting stuff. It is such a pain in the behind to deal with them and their licensing with the servers. I wish they would just give it up and let us host servers normally, however we want, with whatever mods we want, with whatever rules. That's probably the biggest gripe I have with Squad in general.
Yeah, I think anybody in Easy Company can speak to how OWI has really been a difficult kind of partner to work with, so to speak.
And now they're never going to let us license a server
right?
again.
Right after that. Right? Let's hope they don't listen. So that's you said something, Captain, that I think is really applicable to this, and so I want to jump back to that, which is if you could send us back to a World War II game, because that's our roots, would you or wouldn't you, and why?
I think it would depend on the game and what the game offers. Like, there's already 2 World War II games out right now that people have like looked at and talked about. One of which is Postscriptum, which to my knowledge is a dying game, and the other is Hell Let Loose, which to my knowledge they haven't released an SDK. To do what we do in the 29th, we need modding tools. to make our realism matches work. Without that, it's a hassle to run drills, and drills are the experience why people enlist within the 29th. Without those things guaranteed, I would not move to a World War II game.
Makes sense. Does anybody
Even though
else?
I love World War II.
Oh, sure, yeah, of course. Does anybody have anything else that they want to jump on that, or are we thinking that's a solid?
Oh, for the going back to World War II.
Yeah, to a World War II game. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. A couple points to add to that, though, because that's mostly true. The reason why we're not looking at really Hell Let Loose or Postscriptum for a number of reasons is a big thing for the 29th is sovereignty, so to speak. Like, we like having full control over whatever we do. So the more moddable a game is, it's always better for us. That's why we'll never move to, even though this is the complete opposite direction of realism, like a Call of Duty or a Battlefield game, because nowadays those have no custom maps and no mods for the most part.
Yeah, almost no fun.
Yeah, they try to keep it very proprietary, and we don't like that. But also, I think Postscriptum might also be run by the same publishers as Squad, so we'd be dealing with the whitelisting and server licensing as well.
The same nonsense. Yeah, definitely true. Okay, so let's shift over real quick. Now, let's talk from a more leadership perspective now. You guys represent essentially the highest echelons of leadership in the 29th. Sure, technically, there's Master Sergeant and there's Lieutenant Colonel, but you guys represent the real kind of authority here. And so on that, I want to ask you, from the top of the food chain that you're sitting at, you're sitting pretty lofty. And as it were, a lot of us who are moving up the chain or are in the 29th in general, even entering, kind of have ambitions, as I'm sure you guys had ambitions when you were entering in the first place. So what then now is your goal? Do you guys have goals, or is it just a generalized, like, keep doing? Well, what do we got? Anybody can jump in there.
I got a good one to start.
Nice, shoot it.
I would like to expand our comfort, knowledge, and skill in areas outside basic infantry. I get that the 29th is an infantry division, but even in World War II, it was not just infantry. And the more games we get into, and the more video games in general change, the more you are seeing vehicles, indirect fire assets, even they're getting into like a little bit of combat engineering now with like building sandbags and fortifications and stuff. The 29th has for a long time been very, very uncomfortable with a lot of these non-infantry centric skills, and I think it's high time we start really looking at whether we revisit the idea of an armor unit or just really hammer the skills home within our infantry, companies. I would really, really like to at least get comfortable and really good with that kind of thing, no matter which game we move to.
Very interesting. Okay. Does anybody from Dog want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind following up to what Dugfield said. Yeah, that's actually good stuff to have in the future. The problem in the past of us sticking infantry was more structural issues. Like, we've tried on 2 instances to have independent tanking groups, and they didn't really work well. Not to say that we might not be able to try such a thing again in the future, but what seems to work best for us structurally is trying to integrate that into either platoon weapons, like a platoon AIT, or maybe even squad AITs. But yeah, it wasn't ever necessarily opposed to the vehicle aspect. In fact, one of our big motivators when we left Day of Defeat to go to Darkest Hour, for example, was the fact that we could work in some tanks and all that stuff. It was just more in practice of structure. Our original attempts at it with the 747 tanking division or battalion that we attached to us didn't work out too well, and then we renamed it King Company for some reason, which didn't sound, I don't know why we decided to rename it 747. It sounded much cooler, but that one just fell apart, mostly due to bad leadership on the tank detachments group. But yeah, it would take a lot in that regard to make that work, or at least a good leader and good coordination between the infantry side and the tank side if we were to segregate roles again,
Right.
For whatever reason. Other than that, for further goals in the 29th, mostly I was just planning on focusing on keeping Dog Company, improving what we can there. Although I'd like Lieutenant Oaks to answer this one a bit more as well, just because I want to know what his plans, if he's thought of any, for Dog Company in the future are.
Well, take it away first, Lieutenant.
Well, first, when I joined the 29th, I actually didn't have any ambition. I
Really?
just joined because it was a realism unit, and it, seemed like it would be fun to play with people that were just like-minded and a bit more coordinated than, some of the randomness on the servers. I was actually talked into going into SLT by some of my leadership back in AP3. But now that I've gotten where I am, I would just pretty much like to do what I can to work with First Sergeant Sear and just keep improving Dog and seeing how we can make them better.
Very cool. Well, all noble ideas, I think. So, starting to come to a close here. So our last questions I'm going to really toss out towards kind of the viewers here. First of these two is the more serious of the pair, admittedly, which is, speaking of all them ambitions and all the leadership up and down, we have a number of people who have aspirations in the 29th to become leaders, to fulfill these kind of responsibilities, and as, a group of individuals who have done this all, essentially, how would you recommend to those would-be kind of ladder climbers how to succeed? What should they be aiming to do? What should they be aiming not to do? So let's start at the top. First, Sergeant Sear, you got anything for us on that?
All right, yeah. For moving up, or just having any aspiration in that regard, most important thing to do personally would be to make sure you're getting yourself noticed in a lot of ways. I know whenever I ran company drills, I would always leave the team leader for that scenario open to any volunteer. So if you're a private or PFC looking to get noticed for potential leadership, don't be afraid to step up to the plate and volunteer for leadership. I don't know how other drills run it, if they also have open volunteer spots, but anytime you have an opportunity to volunteer, make sure you do. Anytime that your squad leader or team leader goes down and no one seems to be stepping up to the plate to take over those reins, that would also be a great opportunity. And never be afraid if you're too inexperienced. But also in a meta sense, another good advice, even if you don't have ambitions to move up, what would help people to move up is more recruitment. Just because more recruitment allows us to expand into new squads, new platoons, and potentially even new companies, although that one might be a bit of a stretch in terms of hopes and dreams, so to speak. But because for the most part, spots above you only open up when someone either transfers out, has to discharge, or gets moved up. So the best way to create more slots rather than waiting on people to move out is to potentially get us to expand again within our squad or platoon.
Interesting. Well, that's actually solid advice, and it's certainly one that we would all benefit from doing. For Sergeant Deathfield, do you have anything that you want to share on that note?
I would say take the initiative beyond your mandatory 2 hours of drill a week. So, go get a staff job, be on the website regularly, posting stuff regular, guesting, etc. And do this without me telling you that you should, right? This is the kind of thing that makes you stand out. Leadership there's more time involved. So one way that we know that people will have the time is if they're already putting in the extra time. But you doing this on your own, and most people can, is a really, really good way to get noticed. Another thing too is take the advice of what the higher ups tell you and actually follow it before you decide it's not worth it. If I say you should be on the website more and you should post more, and then you say, well, that's not my job, First Sergeant, why would I do that? That's a bad sign, right? There's probably someone better for moving up than you at that point. But just take the initiative yourself. Do more. There's lots of things people can do all the time that just never get done. So if you're just sitting there waiting for stuff to happen, it's not going it's not going to happen.
I would also argue talking to your chain of command. It's the best way to do it.
Making us aware of you in the first place.
Yeah.
Definitely. Do you have anything else you want to add there, Captain, or shall we jump over to First Lieutenant for the final answer?
Just that, moving up is a very personal thing. I know we've given like a lot of examples, but you might be good at doing X, Y, or Z, but you might not be good at doing something else. And your direct leadership, be it squad, platoon, or company, is going to know what that is, and they will, it is their job to help you along. Once again, allocating opportunity is biggest thing in leadership. So, yeah, that's all I gotta say. Talk to your COC.
Excellent. And First Lieutenant Oaks, why don't you close us off here?
Okay, well, I'm pretty much going to touch on a lot of what they all just said.
Of course. Ben.
The volunteering to lead is huge. When you're a squad leader and you come to Platoon HQ and you're like, hey, I want to recommend so-and-so for SLT, and I go, I've never seen this person volunteer to lead or lead at all, that's a big problem. We want to see that person at least lead a couple times so we see, where they're at and what their level of potential is. And then another big one too is just patience, because the higher you try to climb, the more likely you are to get stuck somewhere in that climb, because an expansion isn't happening, or people aren't leaving, or you get hung up on where you're at. And some people get where they get stuck and they start getting antsy and start acting out about it, and that creates problems. So patience is another big one.
I think that's actually a really solid piece of advice to end on in particular. A lot of people struggle with being able to sit in their position for a while, so definitely heed that one. Now, let us end it with one of my favorite questions. It's the one I ask across the board, whoever I interview, which is, what was your favorite 29th April Fool's joke and why? And you guys can jump in as you like if you got one.
I'd like to go ahead and jump in first, because I have two, and I don't think anyone else was around for these two, per se.
Shoot.
The first one was back in 2007. And it was my first time in the 29th, so I didn't personally think we did April Fool's things as a joke. But former Lieutenant Colonel Wilson, he had announced that we were leaving Day of Defeat for Day of Defeat Source. And the funniest part about this, because it didn't bother me much, I already had Day of Defeat Source as well. But we had one member of the unit, a Chancevich, and she was from Serbia. And I guess Serbian culture just does not do April Fools at all. So she legit thought that this was an actual thing and went ahead and bought Day of Defeat Source in preparation for a move to it. And got really upset that she had to spend money on something she didn't want or need when it came to reveal that it was just a joke. And my second favorite one was shortly after our move to Darkest Hour. We had done this one April Fool's where we decided to dishonorably discharge Major Cook under the grounds that he had lied about his age the whole time, and all that stuff. And we had made up fake proof
I think I remember that.
He was still. You might have been here for this one then, yeah. Where we had made up fake proof that he had been still underage person in a military academy or something, but then Tech Sergeant Humphreys at the time, being a former admiral and I forget which branch, he had known people at the military academy.
Oh yeah.
And started calling us out on it. And the whole thing turned into he was doing this all intentionally as a counter April Fools to our April Fools. So he actually bit Battalion HQ and us in Company HQ in the rear with his whole counter April Fool's. So that was beautiful. Nice,
good counterplay on his part. Excellent. All right, First Sergeant Deathfield, how about you? You got anything for us?
I think the ones I've seen, Junior Platoons was a pretty solid one because a lot of people did believe it, including I think he was a PFC at the time, but he was kind of young, and he was definitely under the age, and he was just freaking out. He's like, oh my god, I can't believe I have to leave the squad. And we actually had to calm him down and say, hey, no, it's just an April Fool's joke. Funny enough, a few people believed this one, late one that we had for Christmas. And I was like, Well, at least they read the forums.
Yeah,
Because
you
that's
know.
always the struggle, right? Getting
It's a
people
good
to
sign.
read the forums. Well, like 3 people I know read the forums because they thought that, this was it. They were going to discharge because they couldn't make company drills.
I had several NCOs actively telling me that they thought it was real too, and it was good and funny. I had a good laugh at that. Captain, how about you?
The 29th is super serial and doesn't do jokes.
Got it. So you've chosen to be a April Fool's atheist. I got it. Very cool. And how about you, First Lieutenant Oaks?
I think the junior platoons was one of my favorites,
Yeah.
just because of the amount of people that were freaking out about it, and just all of that. And then the other one, for obvious reasons, was the one where everybody thought I was taking over the unit.
Yeah.
And Master Sergeant had opted to discharge from the unit. So, for obvious reasons, just because I got to be involved in that
Very
one, it
special.
made it a little bit more fun.
Right. My favorite happens to be the one where they convinced everybody that we were going to be sponsored, and so all of our ranks and all of our stuff had to have sponsorship titles and all that sort of stuff. And there was a number of privates who came to me, including one Technical Sergeant Robles, who was a private at the time, who legitimately believed we were receiving a sponsorship. It was super funny. All right, so with that being said, gentlemen, thank you very much for doing this with me. I'm sure the guys all around the unit appreciate this sort of stuff. This is the sort of thing that we're looking for. So, with that in mind then, I just want to say, my dear 29thers, we are bringing our interview to a close. So with 2020 behind us and 2021 bringing us right back into action, we at Civil Affairs want to wish you all happy holidays, and one last time promise to see you again next year. All right, have a good one.